horrifying. It's horrifying. Now, Franke, let's talk about her for a second, because she stayed pretty quiet during her arrest, even appearing annoyed at times. But she wasn't quiet about her thoughts on Jodi Hildebrandt, which is something I want to focus on tonight, because all this evidence also shines a light on the 180 that Franke did when she got behind bars. But I'm not going to talk about this alone. Who do I have with me? All-star panel. I'm joined by Bernarda Villalona, criminal defense attorney who previously served as a senior district attorney in the Homicide Bureau of the Brooklyn DA's office. Also joined by Misty Marris, trial attorney, legal analyst, and a familiar face, Brian Entin, senior national correspondent for NewsNation. Like I said, all-star panel. Great to have you all here. Bernarda, when I looked at this, and I've been following this since the beginning, it's actually worse than I thought. And the first thing that I thought was, no wonder they pled guilty after all this evidence came out.
Absolutely, especially since you have so much that was documented in her journals. You're talking about journal entries. You're talking about videos. You're talking about this video. It's so horrifying, this video having to deal with the Ring camera. I mean, it breaks my heart. I literally get goosebumps every time I watch this. So you have to think it was in her best interest to plead guilty, because a jury will convict her, a judge will convict her. So the only thing she can come out with is, because she pled guilty, is that she'll get some kind of leniency from the parole board.
And not a shocker that Jodi Hildebrandt pled guilty right after. Okay, I want to talk about the 180. This is one of the most fascinating aspects of these phone calls, these jailhouse phone calls. I'm going to play it one at a time. So this is Ruby Franke. This is number 2. And this is a jailhouse phone call she had with her husband on September 1st, 2023. This is 2 days after the arrest. Listen carefully.
The most upsetting thing is that I am completely misunderstood. That is the most horrible feeling. Like, my own family misunderstands me. They misinterpret me. And poor Jodi, they misinterpret her. They misunderstand her. She puts her neck out on the line for people, and then they get mad at her. I mean, it is just horrendous.
You're right, horrendous. I feel so bad for her. Except this is what she said the next month on another jailhouse phone call. This is number 3, October. Let's listen.
I really did feel like the arrest was like a rescue. Like, I just felt so many angels around, and it was like a relief. It was just really kind of surreal, kind of strange.
Certainly different, Brian.
It is different. You know, I keep getting these weird Lori Vallow vibes from her. I mean, you read in the journal.
Lori never changed, though.
No, that's true.
Right?
But the fact that she's saying that she thought her kids were like evil and almost like needed to be saved, I didn't see any of that coming. And I agree with you. You know, I was totally shocked. And at first, when she was sentenced to essentially life, like, I was like, man, this is pretty tough. But when those pictures came out, and you saw the condition of those kids, I mean, it was way worse than I expected.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, because before all this came out, I'm not going to lie to you, when Ruby was at sentencing and we hadn't heard too much about her, I actually kind of believed what she was saying about being in this fog and being manipulated, which may very well be the case. But then you see everything and you have a different perspective, because now I'm looking at this, Misty, and I'm thinking, will Ruby actually get out before Jodi? Remember, in Utah, it's the Board of Pardons and Paroles that actually determines. I'm not so sure now, after listening to these jailhouse phone calls, if she's going to get any more lenient sentence than Jodi.
Yeah, Jesse, so we actually covered, as the verdict was coming out, we covered that together, and we talked about the fact that Ruby Franke actually spoke in the courtroom, and my position was, she's faking it. She's now saying, she's expressing contrition. Jodi Hildebrandt, oh, she was the mastermind and I was a follower and I was manipulated. To me, I thought that was strategy, because there is this range in Utah. Utah has a unique law when it comes to sentencing, that she will get a review by the parole board. And to me, that statement was building a record to shift accountability. Now, all of this that we've seen since, tough to get around this and the horror.
You know who I don't think ever changed? Jodi Hildebrandt. This is number 10. This is a jailhouse phone call. Listen to who she says the victim is, because it's not the kids.
He uses these kids, and he uses all of us as the adults, the parents, that don't hold the kids accountable. So now it's abusive to make a kid sleep on the floor. It's abusive, or it's abusive to, you know, that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. You can't even raise your kids anymore.
Now, Bernarda, we heard about that reference by Eric Clark, the prosecutor, at sentencing. He's like, wait till you hear these jailhouse phone calls. This is why we don't recommend that she gets released anytime soon. After hearing that, what do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I think she should do the maximum amount of time. So the important thing is that even though they didn't take this into account when they pled guilty, they can be able to use this information, jailhouse calls, the videos, victim impact statements at the time when there is a parole hearing to determine whether these two individuals will still continue serving their time. Remember, it's 1 to 15 years consecutive on each of those 4 counts.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.